we tend to assume that the ideologies of the past are homogenous. And I don't know if you've encountered this with your students, but there's this kind of sense of the olden days. And the olden days is this kind of, the olden days starts in like 2010 and goes back to like the pyramids, I think. And that's the olden days. And there's this just homogenous past where women couldn't work and there were only white people in England and everybody believed in God, and there's this kind of assumptions about the things that that were of the past, and there's not this kind of periodization of or this idea that things were changing in the past, and that, you know. And so one of the things that I find really interesting about Jane Austen's period, and one of the reasons I really love working on the Romantic period, is that they haven't established the ideology of race. You know, one thing that really bugs me when I'm reading Victorian literature is that, you know, all that phrenological crap about people having Spanish lips or, you know, wide nostrils or something like that. And you're supposed to think, oh, this is you know, they're this much closer to some kind of spurious racist taxonomy of eugenics, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And we just don't get that in the Romantic period. They're just not interested. Like if you try and think about how are Jane Austen's, you know, what did Jane Austen's characters look like? I mean, if you're trying to say feed it into an AI engine or something like that, what do you get? We don't know anything. Like that's not, you can't build a human being out of that description. I mean, obviously you can, because that's like all of us have an image in our mind of Elizabeth Bennet. But there's none of the kind of minute, heavily racially inflected description that you would get from a Victorian novelist. And that's partly because they just weren't into that kind of stuff yet. They didn't have the kind of fundamental racist ideology that would be developed later. And one of the things that ideology has been really good at doing, and continues to be really good at doing, is to suggest that it's always been the case and we've only just started to come out of it, right? We've only just started to suggest that there's no difference between black people and white people, or there's no important distinction between people from the Indian subcontinent and people from Far East Asia, right? Like and I think that that's something that really plays into the hands of racists today, is this idea that, you know, human beings have always been super racist, and only these crazy intellectuals in the later part of the 20th century have decided to pull away from that. Whereas in the Anglophone tradition anyway, at least, racism kind of doesn't really get that kind of scientific ideological infrastructure until well into the 19th century. It's a, you know, it comes up and then it kind of, well, hopefully starts to go away. I mean, it's taking a lot longer than you would have thought, but it's something that you can locate the beginnings of it. And they just don't have that in Austen's time. Like they have slavery, like they're not, you know, they're not winning, they're not great, but they're not, in a way, the slavery I think is kind of, it's even more damning that they don't have the racist assumptions that would be used to prop up slavery later on. I think that getting people to an understanding of the complexity of Romantic era Britain is going to be really important for neutralising Austen as a tool for the far right. And I think that she continues to be that because, you know, if you watch the 95 adaptation of Jane Austen, it's wall-to-wall white people. And they are, or people who are passing as white. Like, you know, Julia Swallow plays Lydia, has a really interesting familial background, but that's, you know, part of the migrations that influenced British culture in the 20th century. But the ways in which it's as you were saying, it's seen as a safe, right? It's seen as a safe world, an unproblematic world. I think that it's easy for people who want to buy into that as a very palatable kind of image of what their proposed future looks like, that I think to any of us would actually be, a terrifying Nazi dystopia. How do we make a terrifying Nazi dystopia look cute? It'll be a terrifying Nazi dystopia, but everyone will have really nice hair and they'll take tea with each other. And yes, women will be in the home, but everybody in Jane Austen seems to be quite happy being in the home. And so I think it's a way of neutralizing what's most terrifying about that ideology by presenting a world that can be, where it can kind of look like that ideology is in place, even though I don't think it was, and a world that looked from the outside is something to which is seen as escapist, is seen as pleasurable.